All right. Good morning. And this is going to be quite an interesting day for Ohio State football and many of its fans. I am Tom Orr. I am joined by Tony Gerdeman. The Ohio State Buckeyes are kicking off against Michigan State in like an hour and a half, a little less than an hour and a half. And we will have some news in about 8 minutes on exactly who will be there and will not be there for Ohio State. But Tony, I guess we can start with some more mundane business. Get this kind of taken off the table already. Weather today looks fine, 33 degrees, not much winds, no rain, should be fine. So then the real question is, okay, what else? If the weather's not going to mess things up for Ohio State today, what else will? Um, so we're obviously waiting on some some news on players that'll come out shortly. But I mean, let's start with Michigan State since we can talk about Michigan State. Yeah. Um, what do you? How much of a threat can Michigan State be to Ohio State today? Let's start on with their offense.
Well,
Michigan State has not. They haven't run the ball much this year. They've been okay. The passing game has been like occasionally explosive and occasionally nothing. So, what are you expecting out of the Michigan State offense today?
occasional explosiveness, but really, it's just a matter of do they catch the deep balls that Rocky Lombardi throws, and if they don't, then how do they win? And it's really a matter of that. It's coming down with the 50-50 balls and having time to throw them and then making plays because I don't know how they're just going to move 7 yards at a time. They're going to need some 40 yards in there, some 40-yard chunks. And really, I don't expect much from the running game, regardless of who's out, because I'm not sure Michigan State can run it against anybody. So that's a positive in Ohio State's favor. I think a lot of it is just making plays on the outside with their receivers and Rocky Lombardi being perhaps not perhaps probably he needs to be as accurate as he's ever been, which I think is probably about 58% completion percentage.
Yeah, the most accurate Rocky Lombardi day is like imagine the worst possible Justin Fields day accuracy wise, and it's like yeah, that's about it. It's he's been right around like 50-55% for a lot of his games this year. He was under 50% for one of them. I think that was Iowa. I think he was about 47%. I mean, if they can't run the ball and they can't throw the ball, it's you maybe hit a couple. It's like okay, that gets you to 14 points, 17 points. Like okay, and then what? Like I don't know. And we'll get to the Ohio State side of this equation in just a few minutes. 6 minutes now, 5 minutes now, and it's now 10:40. Uh, but I don't know without having turnovers, turnovers leading directly to points or turnovers leading to very short fields, and at least you get a field goal out of them. Like I don't know how Michigan State gets above 20, 24 points today. And Ohio State is obviously not going to be quite at full strength, but I don't know that I see Ohio State getting held under 20 points. So I think the pathway to victory today for Michigan State is probably pretty narrow.
Yeah, and this whole week people have known, fans have known players are out, not necessarily knowing who is out. And you from the players that we hear about, you're like, well, I think they can still beat Michigan State with the players who are out, and that's a statement about I think equally Michigan State and also the Ohio State backups. Where the Ohio State obviously has good depth and they have talent, and their backups would be starting at Michigan State. So there's that whole sort of thing, but also this Michigan State offense has been bad for a while now, and it would take some minor miracles in terms of what we've seen in the past from Michigan State. Minor miracles to beat Ohio State 2015 in 1998. These were games that they should not have won, and they did, and it took some happenings that you wouldn't expect or count on, and So that would be the same case today. They would need some things like that, some fortunate bounces, maybe a couple of unforced errors on Ohio State's part where ball goes off a receiver's hand and it comes down to a Spartan defender, and they get across midfield so that they don't have to go very far after a turnover, because even turning the ball over deep in Michigan State territory, the Spartans are still going to have to go 80 yards, and really that's going to be tough for them. So I almost feel like even the turnovers have to be in fortunate positions for the Spartans to put up like 28 points or something like that. But we have seen Ohio State give up deep passes, and we have seen Michigan State secure some deep passes. So that's the thing that will be interesting to watch, because the formulas there line up, but it's still hard to imagine more than, like you say, 24 or something like that. And that would be a lot, I think.
Yeah, and you have seen fluky stuff happen. You have seen punts hit guys in these games with Michigan State in the past. And interesting fact that I dug up this week was Michigan State since 1974 has beaten Ohio State more times when Ohio State is ranked as a top 5 team. They've done that 5 times since 1974 than they have in all other seasons. So when Michigan State beats Ohio State, they ruin big Ohio State seasons. And other than that, it's like they beat them in 1988, which was terrible, 1999, which was terrible, 2011, which was terrible. So they either beat like fantastic Ohio State teams or terrible Ohio State teams. There's virtually nothing in the middle. 10:43 now. We get 2 more minutes.
You can't let people know that Justin Fields is playing.
Justin Fields is playing. We have, Ohio State has put out a little snippets of information and photos where, they showed you Chris Olave, and they showed you Garrett Wilson, and they showed you Jonathan Cooper, and they showed you Justin Fields this morning. So, there are some names. It's not everyone is out. I think they put out the photo last night of Justin Fields getting on the airplane. And I think that was just basically let's lower the average blood pressure in the state of Ohio by about 10 points in 30 seconds. So, because that was the one that, when anyone was asking, that was always the first one. So, okay, cross that one off your list. You're okay. Justin Fields will be there. And when we got it's 10:44, we're almost there. And I will say we got an embargoed list, which basically they send it to you, so we have them, but we are not allowed to talk about it before a certain time. That's the sort of an agreement we have with Ohio State. And the names on the list there were no like unpleasant surprises. So I think, you look at the staff picks on Friday, there's a lot of scores that are closer than you probably would have expected for Ohio State being a 24-point favorite. But, there was no one on the list that was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was coming. So, there's not great news here, but it's not as bad as it could be. I guess we'll start on offense with the position group, and there are people who are on the comments on the YouTube channel who have already. Some of this apparently has started leaking out already. I'm not sure where. It is 10:45. We can tell you, boy. Let's start with the offensive line. Oh boy, players missing today on the offensive line, and we should clarify these are not necessarily COVID positives. There could be guys who tested positive for COVID. This could be contact tracing. This could just be regular old injuries or rehab. So, but guys who are not available today, Thayer Munford, Josh Myers, Nick Petit-Frere. Okay, so there's 3 starters on the offensive line who are not here today. Also, Paris Johnson, who, we had heard earlier in the week, hey, that both starting tackles may not be there. It was like, okay, well, we'll get to see Paris Johnson. Like, whoa, nope, we're not going to see that either. So, that's the first big position of concern. I'll just run down the rest of the list. Wide receiver Cameron Babb, linebacker Tuff Borland will not play today. Cornerback Cam Brown, you know about him. Wide receiver Mookie Cooper, defensive lineman Jacoby Cowan, defensive lineman Aaron Cox, running back Marcus Crowley, defensive end Tyler Friday, tight end Patrick Gerd, wide receiver Jalen Harris, offensive lineman Paris Johnson, defensive back Cam Kittle, quarterback Jagger LaRoe, long snapper Rowan McCullough, the linemen I just read through earlier, Munford, Myers, and Petit-Frere, defensive end Noah Potter, safety Josh Proctor, that's another big one, tight end Joe Royer, wide receiver G. Scott, defensive back Alec Taylor, and safety Court Williams. And again, some of those guys are guys who have been out, Jalen Harris and Court Williams, and some of those guys have been out for other reasons. But this week, I think the 2 stories are the offensive line. That's absolutely the big one. And on the defense, you're missing Tough Borland, who's the guy who gets you lined up, and you're missing Josh Proctor, who's the guy who I think people have been looking at as this will kind of solve things in the back end of the defense. He can fix things if the problems were with, some of the problems were with Marcus Hooker. Now you don't have Josh Proctor. So which one of those is a bigger issue to you?
I was posting, Tom, so I was not listening. Not having listened, we can.
I suspect you know what I was saying, and I was vamping long enough to wait for you to look back at the camera. Yeah.
First of all, we can talk about Josh Proctor real quick, and then go back to the offensive line. I think we both were expecting more Josh Proctor after that Indiana game, and that was sort of the information we were hearing. And of course, that didn't happen against Illinois, and it didn't happen here. And so I think what they do now with the safety position in terms of how much can you fix, because you're still going to have Marcus Hooker back there, and now you're replacing Josh Proctor's role, which is sometimes he's at safety, sometimes he's in the slot, and it's going to be a new guy. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes, whether it's Ronnie Hickman, redshirt freshman, or the other redshirt freshman, Bryson Shaw. We've heard good things about Legend Cavazos, true freshman there. I'm looking forward to seeing some new guys out there. And it's almost I don't want to say like a spring game type of thing where this is your first chance of getting to see new people, but it's rare you get to see that in December. And so I'm interested to see how that goes. But it's going to be some new guys out there. And that's where the whole Rocky Lombardi throwing deep thing, will come into affect this game. And how, do they do more too deep just to keep two guys back there? That makes it easier for whoever's replacing Josh Proctor, because you're not asking them to do more than one thing. That's like, no, you just stay back and we'll try not to allow any big plays, and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I know that the secondary isn't the biggest issue here, but that was the last thing you said, and so that's what I went with, Tom. But I'm sure we can spend the rest of the time on the offensive line, or also Tough Borland.
Yeah, I mean, and Tough Borland, this may be, we'll see if this turns into a Tough Borland Appreciation Saturday, because Tough Borland, is someone who Ohio State fans have loved to not love for quite a while, but he keeps getting voted a captain and keeps starting, so there must be something there. That's my working theory. There must be something there. It'll be interesting to see. That is, I don't think they're going to have huge issues in the run game today. I mean, you've got, by and large, your defensive line is there. You're missing Tyler Friday as a defensive end. You're missing Jacoby Cowan, who's a backup inside. But, you have Haskell Garrett, you have Tommy Togiai, you have Zach Harrison and Jonathan Cooper and Tyreek Smith and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I mean, you've got Antoine Jackson. Like, those guys are all there. I think they'll be fine on the interior of the line. I think they'll probably be fine in the run game. I think on defense, I think the concern has to be more in that safety position, because it is interesting, because you called this kind of a spring game, and like Ronnie Hickman is someone who we literally have not seen. He did not play last year because he had a knee injury coming out of high school. If he's that guy in that slot corner spot, or the slot corner or second safety spot, I'm going to be legitimately interested to see how he looks, how he plays. I mean, if it's Bryson Shaw, like, same thing. Like, we really literally have not seen these guys outside of maybe a few snaps. So that'll be interesting. Ronnie Hickman was one of the players who Ohio State showed in their photos that they put out on about Wednesday or Thursday from practice. That was like, you could see like 4 players, and he was one of them. So it was like, well, they've got one back there. That's good. Let's go to the offensive line, because I mean, so you're missing your left tackle, Thayer Munford. You're missing your center, Josh Myers. You're missing your right tackle, Nick Petit-Frere. I mean, this is, I think everyone has kind of been doing the point and laugh at Michigan thing. It warrants mentioning Michigan has been missing both of its tackles. That's a problem. When you are missing both of your tackles, that is not a good thing for your run game. That is not a good thing for your pass pro. Now you're missing Josh Myers, who's the guy who makes the line calls. So you've got Tough Borland on the defense, who's the guy who helps get them lined up on defense. He's out. You got Josh Myers, who's the guy who helps set up all the pass pro and ID the blitzes and that stuff makes all the line calls for the offense. He's out. So, you have, kind of the guys who are running the show on the field, on both sides of the field, are going to be missing. That's not great for Ohio State. And, we can talk about that, I guess, for a minute, but then we're gonna have to talk about how do they patch over these holes, because there's a whole bunch of holes. But I guess let's start with the easier one, which is how much is that going to hurt them to not have, basically their quarterback on defense and Tough Borland and the guy making the line calls on offense and Josh Myers.
It's like the battery in baseball, but also include the manager. Like Ryan Day is also out, and so it's just like right down the middle. You're missing guys, and not having Josh Myers. My assumption is Harry Miller slides over, and he's been practicing and he knows all of the offense as well. The concern there, though, is like Harry Miller was, he started slowly and then picked it up and was playing well, and now he's playing a new position. So will there be more growing pains there, or will it be I'm just going to continue where I was, and now I'm fine there? But can he ID all of the blitzes? Can he get everybody in the right protections? When Josh Myers and Justin Fields have to be on the same page with these protections, will Justin Fields could trust Josh Myers? Can he trust Harry Miller to make those correct calls? Will there be some back and forth between those two? And now Harry Miller is the smartest guy on the team in terms of just, the IQ, I'm guessing probably like 340, something like that, something, really, really high. But this is a new animal, even though it's one he's been preparing for. And I'm not expecting perfection. I do still think they'll be able to run the ball well enough. Master Teague is getting rolling. Trey Sermon has filled into his role well. And the guys who will be filling in around them are also, former high school All-Americans, even though you would think like, oh, you're losing Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere. Good thing you've got Paris Johnson, Tom.
Yes. Yeah. And he's someone, I mean, I think I said this earlier, when we heard, okay, both tackles may be out, it was like, well, DeJuan Jones fixes one of those spots. Mm-hmm. And then welcome to the show, Paris Johnson. Hope you're ready. And then now Paris Johnson's out. So, I mean, that's going to be, I think there's logical solutions for a lot of those. I mean, you mentioned sliding Harry Miller from the left guard to center. Okay. So you've got Harry Miller, you've got Wyatt Davis. I feel very confident that's going to be the center and right guard. Left guard, you got Matt Jones. I think that in general, the reports on him have been pretty good. Again, we have really not gotten to see him. You've got Enoch Vamahi, who's there. You've got Gavin Cupp, who's a veteran, who's been around a long time. I think
he's on the list now, isn't he?
Oh, is he? Was he on the list? I don't think I don't know if he was on the list or not. I don't. No, he was not. No. So you've got three options there at guard, and I think that's okay. And I think you get Paris or DeJuan Jones at one of the offensive tackle spots. I'm guessing they slide him over to the left side to protect Fields' blind side, but we'll see. And then the other tackle spot is just kind of like you kind of got the shrug emoji going, because it's like you've got three of your top four tackles out. So after that, you get Max Ray, who's in his third year in the program. He was a kind of borderline top 100 guy, but he just he's not cracked that too deep yet. Could be Max Ray. We've heard good things about Josh Fryer. Yeah, Josh Fryer, who's a true freshman offensive lineman out of Indiana. I mean, could be him. I mean, you could, you're getting already, Josh Fryer. Those are probably the two guys that I think are the sort of closest to prototypical tackles. Like they could do something crazy and just, slide Wyatt Davis out to tackle or something like that. I mean, it's possible they do something like that, but you're getting out of the prototypical tackle build pretty quickly. So, if it's Max Ray, if it's Josh Fryer, I mean, you can kind of run away from that side of the formation and roll Fields away from that side of the formation if you're really concerned, and keep a tight end. And I mean, there were none of the top three tight ends were on the list, which is good. And Cade Stover actually, so you really did the top four tight ends. So you can keep an extra tight end into block. You can do that kind of stuff, try and chip guys on that edge. But that just feels like something that is at some point today, we're going to go, oh, there it is. You knew it was going to come at some point that, hey, there was a big sack on third down, or, a running play gets blown up because there's just, the blocking is no good. And they've got Spartans crashing into the backfield. That just feels like something that's going to come back to bite them at some point today.
And I think that's why we were both kind of low on our score predictions. I went Ohio State with 35, and you went with Ohio State scoring like 24. And so it's, for me, it's because of that. It's the protection where, some 3rd and 5 or something that would normally be easy to pick up ends up in a sack, or there's a first down ends up in a sack fumble, something like that, where you can't expect these guys to hold up every single time, and they're going to look bad in terms of the left tackle and the right tackle. Not, it only takes one or two to change like a 28-point game to a 14-point game, just depending on how things shake out. So I'm guessing, DeJuan Jones, and I'll go with Josh Fryer just because he had his black stripe removed before Paris Johnson. So, and I know just based on what little information we get, however we try to siphon it out from, Twitter videos or Instagram or whatever, he was shown quite a bit. And we talked about him early before he even had his black stripe removed. So, but I don't know. Jones, left tackle, Fryer, right tackle. I know I saw Fryer as a left tackle in the things that we'd see, like in the films and in the videos and photos, and DeJuan Jones would be at right tackle. So I don't know if that sticks. They've had all week to figure it out and see who goes where. And that's the other thing. This wasn't new information for Ohio State. They knew these people were out. So the backups have been in all week since Tuesday and really been preparing since last week because, even though they didn't have Sunday or Monday practice or anything like that, doesn't mean they weren't working, and they certainly have been. So, even Matt Jones, assuming he goes to left guard, I think he was like the number one center in the 2018 class. So, I mean, these are all touted guys that are expected to do well. And Matt Jones has been in the two deep since last year. You would think he could step in and do fairly well. Like at this point, the expectation is like when Pat Elflein came in as a reserve, late in the season as a redshirt freshman, or when other guys just come in, Wyatt Davis as a redshirt freshman late in 2018.
Yeah, the Rose Bowl.
And so guys just step in, but those guys all had 10, 12, 13 games under their belts, as opposed to this as being game 5.
Yeah. And I think one of the points that you raised there that I think is an important one is this is news to you. This is, in terms of being official news to us, this is probably news to some degree to Michigan State. Ohio State was very, very careful to make sure this was as much news to Michigan State this morning as it possibly could be, but this is not news to them. And, they've had time to kind of work guys around, and they have, very much had that next man up mentality this year. And Ryan Day has talked about the fact that you have to be ready. You have to be ready to, be ready to step in, because you can't, you cannot be the Kirk Barton has talked about the guys who, in the NFL are the guys who, eat, bus, stand guys. You eat the pregame meal, you take the bus to the stadium, and then you stand on the sidelines, and that's it. And there's no, you're not ready. You're just like, oh, and look, I'm picking up an NFL paycheck to stand on the sideline. Like, you can't be that. Like, you've got to be ready to go in, because any game, any week, any snap, you may need to be called on, because the depth is more of an issue this year than it ever has been before. And Ohio State does have depth that, when we go through teams and we talk about, how Ohio State's roster stacks up with other teams, even the other good teams in the Big Ten, you look at it and it's like their top level talent is comparable to Ohio State, but then it drops off pretty quickly. Ohio State has been stacking recruiting classes on top of each other. So you do have the luxury of, we're missing a borderline 5-star center, so we're going to slide our 5-star left guard over to center, and we're going to bring in a guy who was a borderline 5-star as a left guard potentially to fill in for him. And you're a little further down the depth chart because you're missing 2 of your 5-star tackles today, plus your third-year starting tackle. So you're a little further down that depth chart than you would probably like to be. But you do have potentially, Nate talked about Max Ray. He is a borderline top 100 guy, and he's been in the program for 3 years now. So this may be his opportunity to step up. And one of the advantages that Ohio State has had in terms of not being blindsided by this, like Michigan State may have been to some degree, is Ohio State can also design the game plan around it. So it's not just putting those guys in place. It's also, hey, putting these guys in a position to succeed, because you have, if you know you're going to have to get the ball out of Justin Fields' hands pretty quickly today, and I'm sure they have emphasized to Justin Fields, get rid of the ball. Do not hold on to the ball today. Do not. You've got all those wide receivers. You've got Garrett Wilson. You got Chris Olave. You got Jameson Williams. You've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. You've got all those guys. You've got Jeremy Ruckert in the pass game. You got Luke Farrell in the pass game. Get the ball out. Get it to him quick. Get it to him in space, and let them figure it out at that point.
No, I'm with you. And maybe after the first or second read, just take off running, get some yards, slide. And I'm expecting quick passes with Kevin Wilson calling a play, also passes to the tight ends, making his guys happy. And then here or there, you go max protect and you take shots down the field. After Michigan State keeps sucking up and up as all of these short passes come, then you keep the tight end in, you keep the running back in, and you maybe have like a 2 or 3 man route, and you take a shot with Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave and see how that goes. And as long as you've got those receivers, it doesn't matter whether it's, short routes, long routes, intermediate. If they're there, you can make things work. And, maybe we see more Garrett Wilson on some jet sweeps, and this is always, secondaries are kind of wary, concerned, possibly afraid of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. And so they give them room. And if they give them room, take the short stuff. But eventually, once they start creeping up, Ohio State should be able to pass block long enough to take advantage of a defense that keeps creeping up, looking for the short stuff. And then you take some shots downfield, and it sounds like the weather shouldn't be a factor in throwing the ball. And then you make some plays that way. But then, the interior, I think, will be okay when it comes to running, which will then help the play action. But the concern for me is just, do the tackles hold up enough? Do they give up some strip sacks, or just, things are going well? It only takes 1 9-yard loss to cost everything in terms of that drive and stop the momentum. And how many of those are there? Can they avoid that? I don't think they can avoid it, but if they do, I mean, that would be outstanding, maybe unexpected, just because, these aren't guys who normally play against the starters on the opposing team, and we'll see what Michigan State has for them. I'm sure they've heard rumors about who was out, because it's not like, because there had been rumors breaking throughout the week about Ohio State losing maybe 3 offensive linemen, or they're being out without some starters. And so, like, they're digging. Everybody has subscriptions to all kinds of websites looking for any information they can find. And so, but you also can't necessarily rely on that. But I doubt they've been caught completely unaware by at least the offensive line issues. But then there's still the matter of, okay, now go defend these guys. And it's like, well, but they're really, really good. And they do things well, and they have good play design. And Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson have had all week to design these things, and not just design these plays, but then on top of them, other plays, and then put these things together. And okay, now how can we sew all of this and tie it all together? And they do that as good as anybody in the country. And that's where the tackles especially need to be able to keep that going, because this is all plan on a plan for a lot of this. And if the plays that are setting up other plays aren't executed because of the tackles, now you've almost cost them 2 plays, because the thing they're going to do off of that might not now be as effective. So I almost feel like this entire game comes down to the left tackle and the right tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I said this earlier on one of our Buckeye Weekly podcasts earlier this week. By the way, we have a couple people in the chat wondering about the full list. We talked about it earlier. You can find it at BuckeyeScoop.com. We've got it posted on the front page there if you want to go through that list. The big names, the 3 of the 4 top tackles. So Paris Johnson, Thayer Munford, Nick Petit-Frere, plus the starting center Josh Myers, plus the starting Mike Backer, Tuff Borland, plus one of the safeties, Josh Proctor. Those are kind of the biggest names, but you can find the full list at BuckeyeScoop.com. Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier this week when we had heard some of these names, and it was kind of like, that's not fantastic. And I think I said that if you told me right now that Ohio State runs for 5 yards per carry on Saturday, I would think, okay, they are probably in pretty good shape. Like if they can run the ball, then that takes, then you can't do the, I'm going to channel Kirk Herbstreit here and say, pin your ears back. You can't pin your ears back and just go after the passer. You got to, Ohio State just has to stay ahead of the chains. If they can get 4 or 5 yards on first down keep Michigan State from being able to just say, okay, we're just going after Justin Fields real hard. You can't let them send 6 guys. You can't let them send 7 guys. I mean, they have to keep Michigan State kind of off balance. If they can run the ball, I think that does that. I think then, if Ohio State can run the ball pretty consistently, then Michigan State is not, if they can run the ball consistently, they're going to do that until they can't do that anymore. And that kind of wipes out that Michigan State pass rush advantage that we talked about earlier. And I think the big concern to me is, can they do that? Because that's not easy, because you've got your 3 starting offensive linemen missing. You've got 4 guys, 4 guys not playing in their normal spots. If you're assuming you're moving Harry Miller over to center, which I think is probably a safe assumption. That's a lot. Like that was Michigan's offensive line coming into the season, was they had 1 starter back, and that's not good. That was something that we talked about over the summer, that when you look at a team that has 1 returning starter on the offensive line, that's a huge red flag that can this team run the ball? Can this team pass protect? And Ohio State has that, and has not had the camp, summer camp to work through it with these guys and, build that cohesion that they always talk about being so important, working together and knowing what the guy next to you is doing, just because you've worked, you've repped with him so many times over the course of the year. Wyatt Davis has probably not repped with, DeJuan Jones or Max Ray or Josh Fryer or whoever's going to be playing that right tackle spot next to him. He has not repped probably a whole heck of a lot with Harry Miller right next to him, because Harry Miller usually has a center between those 2 guards. So even the guys who are, have played this year are not playing next to guys they've played next to. And that in and of itself could be an issue.
Yeah, because it's not, you have 2 starters returning, but you have 1 guy returning to the spot that he plays normally, assuming Harry Miller slides over. And so you almost have 4 new starters out there. And that has been what Michigan did. They lost their tackles, moved a right guard out to tackle, and then had to put a new center in there as well, because their other center either got hurt or got benched. And so they have like 1 guy there, I think their left guard, playing where he played to start the season. And you've seen how that has gone. Now, Ohio State is more talented skill-wise than Michigan. But I do think it's interesting, Tom, before the season, we talked about the depth on the Ohio State offensive line. And I don't know if it was me or you, is probably, well, I know for a fact that I said it. We might find out if it's true, that this Ohio State second-team offensive line would still be one of the top offensive lines in the Big Ten. And now they all won't be out there. But also, only take me seriously on that if they play well. If they play poorly, just remember they've had 4 practices together: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Friday's not an actual practice. So if they look poor, that's not on me. That's just on the fact that they haven't had a lot of time together, as Tom said, to gel. And I think they could definitely get there, because these are all talented guys. And Enoch Vamahi, top 100 player, who's not even, maybe in there, may not. There's guys out there that can get things done. It's a tall order to do it on, a week's notice, and to put all this together. And I think they'll be good enough. I wouldn't feel great about them if this was the postseason, and maybe not the Big Ten championship game, but certainly like the playoffs. I think, Wisconsin or Northwestern, I think they would still be okay enough. If like this was the Big Ten championship game, I think they'd still be able to score enough. But, things got to get settled before any postseason beyond that, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and one thing, and you touched on this earlier, one thing that's really, really important, they did get to practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. This was not just Ryan Day. When we talked to him a week ago, basically right now, he said, if we can get a Thursday practice in, we can go play. But we have to have like 1 good practice Thursday, and then you kind of have your walkthrough Friday, and you go up there. And they could have done that, but they got 2 more on top of that. They got to practice Tuesday. They got to practice Wednesday. As soon as we saw them out there on Tuesday, it was like, okay, they're probably going to be in okay shape for this weekend. even with the guys that we had heard were potentially going to be missing. So that's one thing that's, I'm sure Ohio State fans are looking for things to feel optimistic and happy about. Like that's one thing that they did get more practice in than they were thinking that, was kind of the absolute bare minimum. We have a bunch of questions in our chat on YouTube. So let's, Jordan says, how come you guys aren't recording this from a hotel in Austin, Texas? Jordan, who says we're not? You can't see the ceiling fan.
Right. And I'm not going to let people see what kind of blinds I have behind me. They'll know exactly where we are.
Mook Miyagi says he'd be surprised if they cover. I picked, the line is 24, and I picked Ohio State to win by 10. And I think you were,
I was maybe 20. I said 35-21, something like 35-20. So if they cover, be thrilled.
Yeah.
Unless it's like 24-0, then just
Yeah. And I mean, if you go back earlier this week, one of the things that we talked about is like, look, style points are not a thing this weekend. Like, covering, like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about style points. Like, if Ohio State plays this game and wins this game by 1 point or a field goal or a touchdown, like that's fine. I think we have seen that the committee will give people a little bit of grace if they are missing people. And, Clemson loss to Notre Dame functionally didn't count for them. And, this is not Notre Dame, so you can't lose this game, but you can win this game semi-close. And it's like, yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't think this is going to be something. If Ohio State wins by 7, I don't think Ohio State plunges behind, Texas A&M and Florida or anything like that. And, we'll see. Texas A&M didn't cover themselves in glory last weekend either. So I think just set your expectations to, if Ohio State wins, that's a good thing. And that's about all your expectations should be going into the game today. A lot of people saying Proctor is big. Proctor is huge. Yes. That's a big question. I mean, Christian mentions Lathan Ransom's name. I mean, that's someone who he played a little bit earlier in the year. He's a possibility. I mean, Ronnie Hickman, Bryson Shaw. I mean, they have options back there, and they have options who were generally pretty highly regarded coming out of high school, but we haven't seen them.
Like Ransom and Hickman, both top 100-ish guys, and we've seen just glimpses. And now I think whoever it is, Hickman or Ransom, we're going to see a lot more. And if one doesn't do well, we'll see the other probably.
Vinay Prasad, honestly, it is better if we play with 2 safeties. I do think you might see some of that, and they might play a little more conservative because keep everything in front of you. I think you might see a bunch of cover 3 today, and just keep everything in front of you and make Michigan State, which maybe can't run the ball and maybe doesn't have a very accurate quarterback, like make Rocky Lombardi complete 7 passes on a drive in order to score a touchdown. Like don't let him hit the one big one like he did against Michigan.
I don't think you need to devote 8 guys to stop Michigan State's run. And so if you have 2 deep safeties, that's fine. They can stop the run with 7 or 6 as the Sam runs with the tight end or a slot receiver. But yeah, I think 2 deep safeties more often than not that's probably how I would go. But it also depends on what Rocky Lombardi's doing. If he's terrible, then it doesn't really matter. You can have no deep safeties.
Bahamut 0917. Any idea if these players out today, not including injured players, are going to be out 3 weeks? Now, the positive tests all seemingly came before the Illinois game. So the Illinois game, which was not a game, is the first game that these guys would have missed. So they've already missed one, even though they haven't missed one yet, if that makes sense. Today would be game 2 for guys that have tested positive. Next week would be game 3, unless the Big Ten changes that 21-day rule. You also have guys who are contact traced off of here, and those are not designated differently on this list than guys who were who popped as a positive test. So say you've got a guy who was a contact trace instead of a positive test. He has not tested positive. He just has been in what's defined as close contact with someone who has tested positive during the potential infection window. That person would have missed. Currently, the Big Ten's rule is 14 days because that follows the old CDC guidance. This Big Ten is potentially looking at maybe changing that. They could change that if the medical subcommittee changes it to the new CDC guidance, which just got updated this week, which is 7 to 10 days. It hasn't happened yet, so therefore they missed last week's game. They missed this week's game. But you could have some of those guys on that list come back next week because that 14 days would be up. So, I mean,
stay tuned.
Yes, exactly. Stay tuned. Say that. If you want to say that there could be two guys at the same position, and if they're both out, one of them tested positive, one of them was a contact trace. The guy who's a contact trace would be back next week. The guy who's tested positive would still sit out next week. So, if there are no further positives, odds are this availability list will be shorter next week. But we don't know exactly who is positive and who isn't. We've heard some names, but we don't. Ohio State has not designated that, and we have not heard that in any sort of official way. So stay tuned for next Friday or next Saturday morning when we find out for sure. Yes, Star of Indy says Fields can't linger in the pocket as long as he has been, especially today. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure that's probably on top of the chalkboard in the locker room. No lingering.
No loitering. What's that sign say? No bare feet. What's that sign say? No fighting. Ryan D says DeJuan Jones is going to have a big game unless he's at guard. And I don't think he's going to be at guard. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be, welcome to the show, kid. Like
run behind that dude.
Yeah.
Get him going. Run behind him. Throw a tight end next to him and just see what happens and get his juices flowing, get his confidence going, and maybe that's where. Then the pass blocking becomes better because he's more confident in himself and he's less nervous just because the offensive line loves to get going with the running game and then everything else feeds off of that. So maybe instead of trying to avoid their impact in the passing game, maybe use them a little bit in the running game to get their confidence built.
Ryan says this may be the game where they have to out-athlete the other team. I mean, and that's a nice thing with Ohio State's receiving core. You can just say, Justin Fields, just get the ball to Garrett Wilson and see if Garrett Wilson can do something cool, because Garrett Wilson has a tendency to do something cool when he's got the ball in his hands. Chris Olave, same deal. Jamison Williams, you get him the ball. I don't know if the lack of pass pro is going to limit the amount that they can heave one deep to Chris Olave or Jamison Williams. Do you want to have Fields back in that pocket for 4 seconds waiting for someone to run a 40-yard route? Like maybe not, but you do have guys who can make plays in space. So
we'll go back to that chalkboard. Number 1, no loitering. 2, do something cool.
Mm-hmm. Man, I don't know why you're not in charge of making this game plan every week. Rightful One says he's wishing Ryan Day was there with all the players out. I mean, yeah, it doesn't help to not have Ryan Day there. Ryan Day's impact during the game, I think, Ryan Day has had his impact on the game plan. Ryan Day has had his impact on, I'm sure they have gamed out all the different scenarios that, hey, if it's 4th and 2 on the plus 30, you're going for it. I don't care. Like they've probably had all of those conversations right now, because you don't want to you want to have as much sort of figured out in advance, so that Larry Johnson, who's a first-time head coach at Ohio State, he was an interim briefly at Penn State as well. But, this is by far the biggest game Larry Johnson will have coached in his career as a head coach. And, you want to have that all figured out, so you don't have, Kevin Wilson is down there to help him on the sidelines today, but you don't want to have, a bunch of stuff where they have to figure it out. You just want to kind of know, like, okay, if we're in this situation, this is what we're doing. Like you've already done the thinking, you've already figured it out, and it's just implement the plan. Brian says might be a closer game than people expected. Well, yep, maybe.
Sure might be.
Let's see. Peyton thinks Justin Fields might die if they have to pass. I think probably won't die.
No, I think he'll be. Although, yeah, it was late last season when he got injured that ended up costing them basically the playoffs and all of that stuff. So you wouldn't want to see that again. But you're going to have to throw the ball. I mean, you're going to have to. You've got one of the best passers in the game and some of the best receivers, so it wouldn't be wise to not utilize them, unless of course they're just rushing for 500 yards, and then it's like, well, just run the ball because we'll get out of East Lansing as quickly as possible. Which I believe the sign entering East Lansing, it says "Welcome to East Lansing," and then below it says "Just get out as quickly as possible."
I think my favorite question so far from Jordan: do you think Antoine Simmons is on Justin Fields' radar? For the, if you don't remember, after the Michigan State game, Joe Milton, Michigan quarterback, was asked about Antoine Simmons, the linebacker for Michigan State, whether he was on his radar, and he just, whether what he knew about him. He just said he wasn't really on his radar before the game, which Antoine Simmons is leading Michigan State in tackles this year. He's one of their star linebackers. Like that's someone that should have come up during film study at some point, I think, probably. And I'm going to guess Justin Fields is aware of Antoine Simmons
from Ann Arbor as well.
Yes, he went to Pioneer High School, which is catty corner to Michigan Stadium. He was committed to Ohio State for quite a while, and then flipped to Michigan State kind of late in the process. So has ties to all three teams. As does Bradley Robinson, long snapper for Ohio State. Mm-hmm. He started his career at Michigan State, transferred to Ohio State as a walk-on, and had an older brother who was also a long snapper at Michigan. So a couple interesting things there. That was in my 10 numbers and notes to know for the game. You can find that at buckeyescoop.com on the front page. Henry California, he says, quick throws on first down with that offensive line don't run on first down. I mean, if they can run on first down, they're going to. I do think they probably will try and spread things out, because if you get real predictable, that's when you're gonna, you have seen teams with bad offensive lines. This would not be the first time a team with a shaky offensive line tried to run the ball very predictably in Michigan State in Spartan Stadium. The home team did that for quite a number of years, much of the past decade, in fact.
Don't do what Jim Boltman does.
Yes. Yeah, a number of people saying that Ohio State has to win with style points. Ohio State has to win by 21. I think that's just, if they do, like, wonderful. I'm sure Ohio State would love to win by 21, but just prepare yourself for the fact that Ohio State may not cover the spread today. Ohio State may not win by 20 points. Ohio State may be, up by 10 with 5 minutes left in the game. And you're kind of going, why is this still a game? And it's like, well, do you see who's not here? That's the answer.
Well, and I also think Texas A&M is who they're being measured against right now, and probably they will also be measured against Florida at some point if Florida wins the SEC championship. But the style points, Texas A&M is not getting them. If Ohio State doesn't, but they still win the Big Ten championship, now you've got that trump card, and that's when that gets played, when you're comparing to Texas A&M. Texas A&M won't have a Big Ten championship or a conference championship. So even if those two teams are even, because Ohio State is winning by one this week and one next week, whoever they play, or if they don't play and the rules are changed and they still get to go to the Big Ten championship game, like, having that will give them the benefit of the doubt over Texas A&M. Conceivably, that is, unless the committee views Texas A&M as not being comparable to Ohio State anymore. So, but at this point, as Tom said, they also look at who's out, and they're going to see who's out and know, like, well, 10 points, 30 points, 1 point, you won on the road with so many different people out. And we haven't even really gotten into too much of Tuff Borland or Tyler Friday. Other guys, not that the committee was like, they didn't have Tyler Friday, so we're going to give them credit for whatever they did. But that is more depth, and it affects the rotation. Maybe we'll see more of Zach Harrison.
And they're starting to run through warm-ups at East Lansing right now. And here's the starting lineup, according to guys who are kind of running together right now. This is a pretty good chance this is what it ends up being. DeJuan Jones at left tackle, which is what we thought. Matt Jones at left guard, which is, I think he was probably the name that we thought of first as in terms of who would be the left guard. Harry Miller is at center, Wyatt Davis at right guard, and then Max Ray at right tackle. So it is Max Ray looking like he's going to start for the Buckeyes. I mean, it's a big line. I mean, you have size up there. If they can get a push, Max Ray is someone who, like, I'm real interested to see what Max Ray looks like, because he's someone who's been around for 3 years, came in with a decent amount of hype, and just hasn't really gotten an opportunity. So, well, here's your opportunity, and this is again, like, this is the Ohio State problem. Like, yeah, you're decimated in the offensive line. So you're putting a top 50 left guard, Matt Jones, in there. You're putting a top 100, borderline top 100 right tackle in there in Max Ray. And it's like, boy, I hope these guys can hold up. And, there are a lot of programs that would not be too devastated to have those guys who to plug into those spots.
Is that it? Are we all?
We are caught up on. We have defeated the listeners on questions, which is good.
It's almost gone an hour.
We have almost gone an hour,
which was expected, given all of the names that were going to be on this list.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Yeah, and someone asked if the spread has gone down. I have not seen an updated spread. It was last I saw it was 24, and I think the over/under was 59 or something, and it was like, you might want to look at if you can still get those numbers, you might want to parlay.
I'm checking right now.
Parlay Sparty plus 24 with the under. That might be that might be a winner for you.
Let's see.
And just
22 and a half.
22 and a half. Okay.
Over under right now 59.
Yeah, I mean that honestly, it's interesting that the number has not moved that much. That I mean, maybe they're worried about getting middled, but yeah, that's not nearly as much.
They have more confidence in the offensive line than you do, Tom.
Yeah. Well, I am a noted hater. I think we have gotten through all of our listener questions. So
a lot of people on the line, Tom.
A lot of people, yes. And Vinay Prasad says the spread is down to 21. So he may have seen it somewhere else. So
yeah, I mean, I was looking at covers.com.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I think we are. I think we're all caught up with the listeners. So, boy, this is going to be an interesting game.
What are you looking forward to seeing most?
I want to see how the offense moves the ball. I want to see how they get around the fact that they're missing functionally all of their offensive line today, because you can do that schematically. You can do that. And maybe they don't have to. Maybe the offensive line is better than we think, and maybe the offensive line gets a good push. I mean, if there's like one thing that's like, if you see this, what would it make you most optimistic about Ohio State's chances today? And it's like, if they can get a good push and if they can pass pro, like they might kill them. But I don't know. Can they? Like I am legitimately interested to see that, because not having Josh Proctor on the defense, this does not seem like the kind of team that's going to be able to take advantage of that in the way that other teams might be able to. I think there are other teams that might be more of a concern in terms of capitalizing on Josh Proctor being out. But, the offensive line, like this is Michigan State. Michigan State always has a good defense. They've gone from a defensive-minded head coach in Mark D'Antonio to a defensive-minded head coach in Mel Tucker. They have some pretty decent players. I mean, they've run into the same issue that everyone does against Ohio State. They don't have the depth that Ohio State does, but Ohio State is dipping way into its depth today, and Michigan State is largely not. So, yeah, that's going to be, I think, what I'm most interested in is that offensive line and how that holds up.
I'll go with the since you took that, I am interested to see what the safety situation looks like, because this is going to be kind of a temporary fix, because Josh Proctor will be back, and he's part of the full fix of what was supposed to be putting this secondary together and getting it correct after what happened against Indiana. And so this, I won't say it's a donut, it's a spare tire, but it's going to be, watching if Ronnie Hickman plays really, really well, or Lathan Ransom or Bryson Shaw, then you're like, well, now we can start making him part of that full plan. And maybe they were already. And now we get to see what they've been doing in practice preparing. And I'm always interested to see new guys step up and do something like Brendan White, a couple of years ago, where out of the blue, now he looks like he belongs, and maybe that'll happen again here. And also, let's see what Dallas Scant does, assuming he is the starter at middle linebacker, and they don't we're going to put Pete Werner there and Taraji Mitchell at the will or something like that, because that could totally be the case as well, just depending on what they do. But not having Tough out there, I wonder if there will also be some confusion with the defense a little bit, just because he gets everybody situated, and he's outstanding at that. He's a coach on the field, as everybody will tell you. And so that's just another coach not on the field, Tom. And that'll be something else to watch, is who also isn't there that might normally be there.
Yeah, and one thing that might help with Tough Borland is you still have Pete Werner, you still have Baron Browning, who've been guys who've been around for a long time. So they, you should still have linebackers on the field who know what they're doing and know where everyone's supposed to be. That should help.
And Browning has played the middle.
Yeah, he has. That's true. Maybe to his detriment, but he did.
Yes.
Bill S., who is starting in the secondary. I mean, Proctor and Cam Brown. Cam Brown, obviously, with the Achilles injury at Penn State. Proctor is a new name on that list this week. So, I mean, I'm thinking you're going to see pretty more or less the normal guys, Sean Wade and Seven Banks on the outside, Marcus Williamson in the slot, Marcus Hooker in that deep safety spot. And then,
who's the nickel guy?
Yeah. Who's the nickel guy? Is it Ronnie Hickman? Is it Bryson Shaw? Is it Lathan Ransom? I think I would put my money on Ronnie Hickman probably, but
that's where I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, we'll all find out together. Won't that be fun? Yeah, that's Bill says that wasn't a question as asked. So who is starting in the secondary is the question you asked. I feel like that's the question we answered, but maybe not.
Whether or not it was a question that you mentioned being asked, we still answered it. You said Marcus Williamson in the corners and Marcus Hooker. So same secondary, same starters as every other game this year.
Yeah. I mean, Proctor's the only one who's out, and that's a big loss because he's someone who I think was viewed as the guy who could be the solution in a couple different spots, and now he's not going to be the solution in either of them. So, yeah, that's potentially an issue. But all right, have you updated your score prediction with the final list being out, or are you still where you were?
I'm still going to go. I think I said 35-20, and I assume Mel Tucker will try to kick field goals because that's what Michigan State does, and they're like, 3 points is as good as a touchdown. So. And we know Ohio State has issues with their field goal kicking. And so, yeah, I feel good about 35-20. I feel like 20 is a lot, though.
Yeah, and I think I had 24-14. I'm feeling like that might be low. Like they should back into 31 points somewhere. But I think you might be a little high for Michigan State. I might be a little low for Ohio State. But 31.
What if our average is perfect?
Then we've done that a bunch of times. Normally our point spread different, point differentials like 2 points, and it's like, oh, we're right there. How about that? We're real smart. This time we're a little further off, but on average we are going to nail it. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like a 31-17, something like that. Yeah. I mean,
what you say 20 is too high, but 17 is okay.
Right, because 17 is lower than 20. Do you need math explained to you?
No, I don't need math explained to me.
Well, I picked 14. You picked 20. What do you think is in the middle of 14 and 20?
I don't know.
Take off your shoes. So yeah, that's, I mean, again, like I don't think Ohio State's probably covering that spread, but if Ohio State wins 31-17 or something like that, 28-17, that's probably fine.
Tom, what happened the last time Ohio State went to Michigan State and you doubted the Buckeyes?
That would be 2000. No, that was a home game.
Was that 2018, right?
No, that was 2017.
17? Okay.
That was 17 because that was the week after. Tony's referring to 2017, where I picked Ohio State to kill Iowa, and Ohio State lost by 1 million. And then I said, okay, well, Ohio State is doomed now. And then they beat Michigan State by 48-3, and that was at home. So I missed the two. My two predictions were off by 100 points between the 2 weeks in back-to-back. And the week after that, in lieu of a game prediction, I submitted a pancake recipe on our staff picks. So own it. Got to own it when you're wrong. If you're going to go when you're right, you got to own it when you're wrong.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. We will have, there's going to be plenty to talk about on the post-game show one way or the other. We will be back after the game for that. The game should be over. Well, let's kind of work through this. The game's noon, should be done by 3:30. Post-game interview should be done by 4-ish. So it usually works out to kind of late second quarter, halftime-ish of
4:45, 5-ish
games. Yeah, something like that. We should be back on here for a full post-game instant reaction show for the Buckeye Weekly podcast. Hope you guys can join us for that. We'd love to answer your questions there because you guys a lot of times are thinking about things or wondering about things that we are not necessarily thinking about, and so we'd love to get your input on those as well. So thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you check out BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a ton of great content there. And if you are not a member, man, This has been a week to be a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. Our team of insiders has absolutely owned this week and had been right on top of everything. We've had fantastic practice reports, really updated information on guys who how testing was going this week in terms of, hey, it's looking better than they think it was looking. Really, really good insight. And this is a week when we got literally zero player interviews, literally zero coach interviews. So this was the week of the insiders. And kind of seems like we might have a few more of those at some point coming up later this year. So it might be a good time to be a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. You can just sign up right there on the site. Also, a great thing to ask for Christmas, because you don't need more socks. You don't need another tie. You don't need, whatever they sell at Sharper Image. If Sharper Image is still a thing, you don't need that. Just get a membership at BuckeyeScoop.com. Sky Mall. Stop buying things out of Sky Mall if that's still a thing. Get a membership at BuckeyeScoop.com. Instead, just even just try it out for a month. Your first month right now will include Michigan or whoever Ohio State plays next week, the Big Ten championship game, college football playoff selection show, whatever's happening on a New Year's Day in terms of Rose Bowl or Sugar Bowl or wherever else Ohio State is playing. And that's just an early signing day as well. And that's just your first month. So give it a shot today at BuckeyeScoop.com. Thank you guys for joining us. We will talk to you after the game.